My wonderful relationship with my boyfriend has turned sour after he got down on one knee, so he blames me for ruining it as he thinks I'm now a bridezilla. My partner and I have been together for nearly 6 years. He has honestly been the most amazing, wonderful, and supportive person in my life. He doesn't just make me happier, he makes me healthier. He's been absolutely fantastic in every way imaginable. About 2 years ago, we had the big marriage talk. We were both honest about what we wanted. He admitted that getting married made him so nervous. He has literally never seen a successful marriage. Every marriage he's ever witnessed has either ended in disastrous divorce or very sad premature death. I said I would stay with him whatever he chose, but there are some things I wouldn't do unless we were married. Just as he's seen too many marriages fail, I've seen too many loved ones be abandoned by men once the kids come along or when he finds a better option. In other words, as long as we weren't married, no kids, and our finances remained strictly untangled from each other. He proposed to me a few months after that, and since then, he's turned into an absolute nightmare. First, he refuses to do anything wedding-related but accuses me of taking over and being a bridezilla when I make decisions without him. He does things behind my back, like inviting our friend who has 4 kids to bring the children when we agreed the only exception to the no kids rule would be my niece, who will be 3 months old and, for obvious reasons, can't be separated from my sister for the weekend. I can swallow that frustration, but he's also become hypercritical. Any mess around the house, even if he made it, if I haven't cleaned it up by the time he gets home, he refuses to talk to me. I work from home, so I usually do a lot of the chores like the dishwasher during my lunch break, but sometimes I don't have time. This is a busy time of year, and while my job is usually constrained to the 9 to 5, in the last few weeks I've had to work until 8 or 9. When he stormed in last night, angry that he had to clean the kitchen, and I pointed out I'd been working for 12 hours straight, he looked me in the eyes and said, "So?" He's threatened to throw me out of the house and call off the engagement 4 times. He's stopped initiating fun time. I've come to dread the sound of the door unlocking because he can't go 5 minutes without finding a problem to have with me. It's so bad that my mother, who was ready to adopt him a year ago, is refusing to be the witness that signs our marriage certificate. I've asked to call off the wedding, go back to being just girlfriend and boyfriend, but he says he really does want to get married and he's just doing all of this to make sure he's making the right choice. Increasingly, though, all he's done is convince me I'm making the wrong one. What the heck do I do? Edit, if it wasn't clear, I'd already decided not to marry him when I made this. I'm packing up and going to my mum's for now. I'm safe and don't need anyone to call the cops. Thanks to the person who offered, though. Relevant comments. Comment 1. If you have to convince someone to get married, girl, don't do it. If they want you, they'll move mountains to make it happen. This dude was simply dumb enough to let the mask slip before he had you trapped. Response. I mean, when we discussed it, I told him I would be perfectly happy not getting married if he didn't want to. I knew he felt generally disillusioned with marriage. I just simply wasn't willing to commit to something like kids or a mortgage if he couldn't honestly say he was planning on staying with me for the rest of our lives. Nothing would have happened if he hadn't asked me. Comment 2. Do you think he wants to marry because you said you won't combine finances until then? Response. I don't think so. I have thought a lot about that. At the time he proposed, we knew his grandma was going to pass away soon. We were renting the house next door to her, and while we knew he'd inherit the house we were living in, the 2 houses had slowly merged gardens in the 10 years he and his grandma had been living next to each other. The 2 houses have been in the family since the 30s, so he was quite keen on buying next door to both avoid losing it. The family member who inherited it couldn't afford to keep it, but also because having a stranger live there would have been a huge privacy issue for both houses. We'd hoped to rent it to a friend or another family member. He does earn a lot more than me, but he's self-employed, so the banks are quite wary of loaning to him. I work in a university, which the banks consider a safe professional job, so getting credit and loans would have been much easier if he'd been married to me. Thinking back on it, I wonder if he asked me not because it was something he wanted per se, but just something that made sense. We'd been together for a while, so it made sense to keep moving forward, it made financial sense, and his family liked me. I'm not a perfect partner or person, but weighing it all up, marrying me had lots of factual advantages for him. I even have dual American citizenship and he'd always dreamed of moving to America one day. Update. This has honestly been one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. I'm back in with my parents, which is awful. I hate it. I feel like a teenager again. They're being very supportive, and I'm grateful I had somewhere to go, but the house is so damn loud and I forgot what it was like. I'm trying to find an affordable apartment, but it's London, so that feels like a bit of a pipe dream. To top it all off, canceling a wedding a month before is expensive. Only the celebrant and the photographer have accepted refunds. Every other vendor has been paid in full, and that's money just flushed down the toilet. It's been exhausting. Before this, I was in a pretty great financial situation. I had savings and a plan and a house and a financially stable partner. Now I have less than a tenth of my savings, nowhere to live, and no real prospect for the future. It's not easy processing losing him, not easy at all. I'm still in the part where everything makes me cry, and you feel like someone has taken scissors to your soul, but I've experienced both grief and breakups. I know this feeling will eventually fade, even if it might never completely disappear. When it's mixed in with the relief of being able to exist without criticism every 5 minutes, I'm hopeful it will pass sooner rather than later. But I have no experience with this kind of existential fear of being alone, not having the family I've wanted for so long, not knowing what's next, and actually trying to date someone. When I was little, I never knew what I wanted from my career other than that I had one, but I always knew I wanted to be a mom. That dream feels like it's getting further and further away every day. I have no experience with this burning embarrassment of telling everyone in your life that the wedding they were invited to isn't happening. It was so painful telling his niece and nephew I wasn't going to be seeing them again. They cried and clung to me and begged me not to go, and they ripped my heart out. It's easy online to tell someone to end things, but when you've built a life together, disentangling it is so bloody difficult. A divorce would be easier because then we'd have a legal framework for all of this. Instead, I have to decide if I want to take him to court for the custody of my cat when I don't have a proper place to house her, but she's my cat. You might have noticed I've avoided really talking about my ex. We're communicating through our parents. He tried to reach out several times, but if I talk to him, I know I will do what I always do. I will buckle and take him back because I love him very, very much. I've been in therapy, again, courtesy of my parents, and my therapist has to keep reminding me to love myself more than I love him. I miss him anyway. He's promised to change, promised couples counseling, promised he knows he was wrong. But he also hasn't said the word sorry yet. Such a small word, and yet so telling. He's been generally pretty accommodating to me. Expenses have been split 50-50, which is fair but certainly a worse deal for me. He left the house so I could gather my things in peace. I can tell from the state of it this has hit him hard. The cats have been the only sticking point, and I understand why. The house is old and creaks. Being there alone isn't fun. Neither of us liked it when we were alone, and a large part of the reason we got cats was for the company at night when the other was away. I'm sorry if this wasn't the ending you wanted to hear. I appreciated all the advice.